As we begin our service, I invite you to close your other windows or apps and devices. Take a deep breath and center yourself for worship. We begin by calling forth the ancestors and descendants. We call forth the ancestors, people who made each of us, the biological ancestors, spiritual ancestors, teachers, and guides. We call forth those who imagined and made this congregation possible and who have sustained it up to this present moment. We open in welcome to the ancestral people of this land and acknowledge that our church, like all of Burke, rests on the unceded territory of the Manahoac tribe of the Great Sioux Nation. And we seek healing with the people of this land whose bodies and spirits live on in their descendants, the present-day members of the Monacan Indian Nation, the Patawomac Indian Tribe of Virginia, and the Piscataway Indian Nation. With this, let us open to our longings and our hopes for all the descendants of all nations, that we might live for them today, honoring the ancestors as we move toward healing, so that all the descendants together shall know full justice. Our chalice lighting words this morning come from the poet James Arlington Wright from his poem, The Jewel. There is this cave in the air behind my body that nobody is going to touch. A cloister, a silence closing around a blossom of fire. When I stand upright in the wind, my bones turn to dark emeralds.
Good morning. We welcome you to Accotink Unitarian Universalist live stream worship service. I am Jim Gerard, your worship associate, and I'm happy to be here today. Accotink UU Church is a welcoming and inclusive community that seeks to create a more just and compassionate world. All are welcome here in this justice-seeking, earth-healing community of faith. You are welcome no matter who you love, no matter your identity or heritage, no matter your beliefs or background, no matter your means or ability, you are welcome here in this religious community. If you are new to Accotink and would like to talk more about this church, please be sure to reach out to me or our minister, Reverend William Levwood, or one of the greeters using the chat box. On our website, www.accotinkuu.org, you can check the online order of service on the worship section. While you're there on the website, be sure to check our events page for the upcoming virtual gatherings and other news. Whether you're a longtime member or a newcomer or something in between, we encourage you to stay for a virtual coffee hour immediately after the service. We're so delighted that you're here today. Welcome.
This is Brown Boy Joy by Tamisha Booker. I am Brown Boy Joy, and I shine like gold. Smiling from ear to ear. Boom! Smash! Bam! Pow! I am fearless and bold. Small but mighty as I walk with pride. I am wonderfully made, future bright, eyes wide. No dream too big, nope, not for me. I am brown and amazing, can't you see? I am Brown Boy Joy, always reaching for the sky. I walk into the room with my head held high. You can tell by my stride, I am happy as can be. No one on earth can steal the joy inside of me. Wherever I go, no matter near or far, you will always find me shining like a star. With a heart so pure, I am loved by all. Walking in my glory, I am standing tall. Filled with love and light, I speak my mind. Take a look at me, I am smart and kind. Sitting on my throne like royalty, brown boy joy, yes, that's me.
Today, both on and offline, Black joy is being lifted up and celebrated as a real and necessary part of resistance to oppressive forces. There's dancing in the street at Black Lives Matter protests, photo exhibitions of the faces of Black joy, Twitter memes of Black people laughing, to name just a few of the ways Black joy is being lifted up and celebrated in the world today. Alice Walker, in her novel Possessing the Secret of Joy, the 1992 sequel to The Color Purple, in that novel, she says that the resistance is the secret of joy. Now, this isn't the only time that Alice Walker has been prophetic in her description of the Black experience and how to survive and thrive while Black in America. And 20 years later, in a 2002 academic article for the Journal of Southern History titled "The Pleasures of Resistance: Enslaved Women and the Body Politics in the Plantation South, 1830 to 1861, American feminist historian Stephanie M.H. Camp writes, "Just as exploitation, containment, and punishment of the body were political acts, so too was the enjoyment of the body." Embodied joy. Note what's being said here. Not just that Black joy is a practice of resistance to oppression, but specifically that one practice of resistance, that practice of resistance to exploitation, containment, and punishment of the Black body is to revel in enjoyment of the body. Notice that this isn't some abstract, platonic, otherworldly joy. This is joy embodied. This is dancing, laughing, eating, sleeping, having sex. This is hot baths with candles and essential oils. This is long walks, forest bathing, under the canopy of the trees' muted verdant light, refracted to surround and embrace us in green, while the breeze cools us and our muscles pump and bones feel themselves buoyed up by the earth. This is the sunrise over the ocean that calms our aching hearts and brings peace to our anxious minds. This is touch. This is the comfort of touch. This is the pleasure of touch. This is the joy of creative expression of color in innovative fashion. This is the joy in the rhythms of hip hop and the beauty of wordplay and the evolution of language through slang and through new forms and ways of using language. This is embodied joy. It's also embodied connection. It's also embodied beauty. It's creativity, knowledge, and wisdom expressed in and through the body. And this embodied joy has a complex relationship with oppression. As Sonya Renee Taylor points out, we don't need oppression to give birth to this joy. Referencing Buddhism, she points out that life's fragility, the pain that is an unavoidable part of having a body, of being human, this being mortal itself, provides enough suffering to give our joy density, to give it weight. Oppressive forces might make the joy that much more necessary for our survival, but the joy was already there, already here in our bodies. Sonya Renee Taylor goes so far as to connect this joy to the divine. She says, in fact, that this joy comes from and is the divine, is our very source and our abiding spirit. That this joy exists as a wellspring that we can draw from. The joy is there, that it's here, below and above, around and within us. For Black people, a commitment to drawing from the well springs of divine joy is an act of resistance. It's a way of saying you may be able to exploit, to imprison, to punish, even to destroy this body, but you cannot take away my bodily connection to joy. For Black people, it's a way of saying you may tell me in so many ways that I'm not lovable, not beautiful, not worthy, that whiteness is the standard, and my face, my nose, my lips, my hips, my complexion, my hair are not beautiful, that hip-hop can't hold a candle to Mozart, that my vernacular breaks the rules of proper English, but none of this is true. None of this is true. And lifting up Black joy is part of how we live into our commitment to our eighth principle, the part of our eighth principle that says that we are committed to working to build a diverse, beloved community. And for Black people, including Black UUs, embodying joy is an act of radical self-love. I'll share more about radical self-love later in the service. We continue in a spirit of meditation. This week we'll revisit the heaven and earth meditation from Rabbi Schaefer Gold. So breathe in and pull the energy into your center, and as you exhale, exhale into the earth, deep into the earth, and then pull from the earth as you inhale back into your center. And as you exhale, send the energy far up into the sky. And then pull that energy from the sky back into your center. Exhaling down into the earth. Inhaling back up into your center. Exhaling up into the sky. And then pulling the energy back into your center. And just continue like this. And remember that if you need more grounding, you can exhale into the ground and inhale and exhale into the ground again. Or if you need more energy and vitality, you can exhale up into the sky and then inhale and up into the sky with your exhale again. Or if you want that balance, that rooted but lifted balance, continue exhaling into the earth, inhaling, pulling into your center, exhaling up into the sky, inhaling back into your center. Just continue with that on your own time. You can do this in stillness. You can let your body respond, reaching down into the ground with your arms and legs as you exhale, and pulling the energy back up into your center, reaching up with your head and your arms as you exhale, and then pulling back down into your center. And continuing at your own pace. You can do this meditation anytime you need to ground yourself, anytime you need to raise up your energy for more vitality, or anytime you need the balance of grounding and rising both. And then take a few breaths just breathing, noticing your belly rising as we bring the meditation to a close. Amen, 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 and blessed be.
The following reading is adapted from a poem entitled "Joy is the Justice We Give Ourselves" by Drew Lantham. Joy is the justice we give ourselves. Joy is the sunrise breaking through the night's remains, bright shone new on a shell-racked shore. A fresh tide-scrubbed world redeemed what was to is. Joy is all the blackbirds flocked together, too many to count, too many to name, everyone different from the next, swirling in singularity across amber-purpled sky. Joy is being loved up close for who we are. Joy is the last song drifting in as the curtains fall. The sparrow's vesper offering, whistle laid down in pine-templed woods. Requiem in May minor, church and a cathedral time built, no stained glass, no pulpit, altars everywhere, just listen, just look. Joy is the ancestors come before, surviving the struggle, staying strong in the midst of a withering storm. From shackled ancestors through Jim-crowed back doors to gerrymandered chokehold now, still here in spite of it all. Joy is my grandma's hands, grits through gnarled fingers tossed, on cold ground to snowbirds she pitied, a love for others that became my own. Joy is at the end, a bruised purpling sky, when the night comes again, when luck is metered by stars winking bright. Joy is the knowing that what this world did not give, it cannot take away. Joy is my seeking, your being. It is mine for the taking, ours to share, more than enough to go around when it seems nowhere to be found. Have yourself a heapin' serving, have seconds or thirds, 'cause joy is the justice we must give ourselves.
Have yourself a second heaping, because joy is the justice we must give ourselves. To be known, to be loved up close for who we are. Radical self-love is the justice we give ourselves. Now, Sonya Renee Taylor, whose wisdom I shared earlier as well, is the person who wrote the book on radical self-love. And I mean that quite literally. Sonya Renee Taylor is the author of the book, The Body is Not an Apology, The Power of Radical Self-Love. Radical self-love is not dependent on oppression. Remember, we said that about joy earlier through the wisdom of Sonya Renee Taylor. But one way to discover radical self-love is to look at the way human beings are told that we are less than. Sonya Renee Taylor calls this the ladder of bodily hierarchy. And she defines this ladder of bodily hierarchy as all of the things that put us in a relationship of greater than or less than, all the systems that reinforce and hold that experience of greater or less than. She further explains that in a Western industrialized, imperialist, colonialist construct, the top of that ladder is white, able-bodied, cis, heterosexual masculinity. But that's just the central bones of the ladder. She says it also includes whether we're thin or fat, whether we're young or old, any way that we can compare ourselves with others as greater than or less than others, that's the ladder of bodily hierarchy. Accountably dismantling this hierarchy within ourselves and our institutions is another part of how we live into the commitment we make with our eighth principle. And radical self-love, according to Sonya Renee Taylor, is the antidote to this oppressive ladder of bodily hierarchy. She tells us that the most powerful way to destroy the ladder is to destroy the ladder inside yourself, is to look at the ways in which we have embodied the tenets of this ladder. And in the place of the ladder of bodily hierarchy, to embrace radical self-love. Easier said than done. So I'd like to offer some tools for how we can learn to radically love ourselves. The first comes from Sonya Renee Taylor. She tells us, just look for whatever ways you compare yourself to others, whatever ways you say that to yourself, I'm less than or greater than someone else. And that's where you're still caught on the ladder. Do you think your love of Mozart is better than hip hop? Are you proud of your thin, fit body and dismissive of other bodies? Or conversely, do you judge yourself for not having that thin, fit body like some other people do? Do you think the music you love is a guilty pleasure because it's not as worthy as some other kind of music that someone else defined as better?
Amusing or amusing.
And speaking of music, that brings us to the other practice that I'm going to share this morning for embodying radical self-love. In conversation with Prentice Hemphill, Sonya Renee Taylor, on the podcast Finding Our Way, asked Prentice, how did you learn to embody radical self-love? So our second practice comes from Prentice Hemphill, who shared a practice of singing Whitney Houston songs, Whitney Houston love songs to yourself. So I've been doing that this week. I've been singing Whitney Houston love songs to myself. It's been very revealing and rewarding. I even think that we can chart the journey of self-love through different love songs from Whitney Houston's canon. There's the song, Saving All My Love for You. Don't be fooled by the title. This is only the first step on the journey of embodying radical self-love. Saving All My Love for You is a song about a woman having an affair with a married man. There isn't a lot of love in the song. In fact, when I listen to it as a song of self-love, I really resonate with the first lyric that says, a few stolen moments is all that we share. Sometimes I feel like that's all I have the time and energy for when it comes to loving myself. A few stolen moments at the end of a long day. Just like the man Whitney is addressing the song, just like many of you, I have a lot of other responsibilities. In Whitney's words, you've got your family and they need you here. And then she sings, and this is the clincher, though I've tried to resist being last on your list, no other man's gonna do. Isn't that the truth? That if we are last on our own list, if we aren't loving ourselves, nothing else is gonna do it for us. This is why Sonya Renee Taylor says that radical self-love is the foundation. Because if we place our source of joy and happiness on any other foundation, she tells us, on wearing the right clothes or owning the right house or having the right body, even on our health, we're placing our trust on a faulty foundation, because all of those things are transitory. It returns me to the wisdom of Buddhism with its 5 remembrances practices. The remembrances include that we're all going to get sick, that we're all going to get old, that we're all going to die, and that everything we own and everyone we love will at some point, in some way or another, be lost to us. Now, Buddhism says that all we have is our karma. All we truly possess is our karma, our actions and the fruits of our actions. And I do love that. In our Unitarian Universalist tradition, that's known as salvation by character. And I'm committed to that, to refining myself, committed to the practice of making myself better. Author Keith Layman, author of the memoir Heavy, calls this revision. Just as any great work of art, and Keith Layman is a truly great writer, and you know it's because he revises and revises and revises. Just as any great work of art is the result of thousands of hours of revision, starting with the act of learning the craft of writing in the first place, and then continuing to include the revision of each piece of writing. Just like that, a truly great life is the result of a constant practice of revision. Keith Layman suggests that through revision, we can not only change our future, we can even heal our past. But as much as I'm committed to salvation by character, I have to also admit that I'm often not that good at just being a human being. I try really, really hard. But in so many ways, at so many times, I'm just not that good at it. In his writing, Keith Layman shares many of the ways he's not that good at being a human being. He writes about his disordered eating. He writes about his gambling addiction. He refers fairly often in his writing to the ways that he fails to love others well. Keith Layman is a remarkably confessional writer. I mean, he really lays it out there. I'm not going to do that in relation to my life in this sermon, and I'm not asking you to do that publicly. Like me, you may be comfortable sharing that only with those most close to you. However you do it, this is the next step on the journey of self-love. And this is the third part of our 8th principle. Journeying toward spiritual wholeness by embracing our full self, our whole self, without reservation, holding nothing back. It's about making time to practice loving ourselves. In the song, I'm Your Baby Tonight, Whitney sings about love at first sight. She sings, "You've got a magic, boy, that I just can't explain." Can you imagine singing those things to yourself? Can you imagine falling in love with yourself at first sight? Can you imagine celebrating your magic? A magic that's beyond explanation? Whitney continues. She sings, "Whatever you want from me, I'm giving you everything. I'm your baby tonight." To love yourself enough to make time for knowing and loving yourself. That's the next step. Whitney sings, I can do anything for you, baby. I'll be down for you, baby. Lay all my cards out tonight. Can you do that? Can you lay all your cards out, discovering and celebrating your magic, laying out all the cards, the good, the bad, the ugly, and falling in love with all of it, giving yourself everything? Can you move from a few stolen moments for self-love to an evening or even a full night or day devoted to knowing yourself, to laying out all your cards, including your magic, how you bless the world, and also how you curse the world, and loving yourself through it all? I'm not saying that it's about completely letting go of salvation by character. Layman writes a lot about wanting to be a healthy human being who lives in a way that's healthy for himself and healthy for those he loves. He's still working on that, just like the rest of us. But he isn't afraid to share on the page the ways that he's failing. And by doing so, he's modeling for us the practice of radical self-love. And that's the other side of how our Unitarian Universalist movement envisions salvation. The other side is salvation by grace. And we are truly radical in our visioning of salvation by grace, claiming that everyone is saved by love, no matter what, no exceptions. In our movement, there is no end to that grace. So that's the third step on the journey of radical self-love. Whitney sings, "I know that when you look at me, there's so much that you just don't see. But if you would only take the time, I know in my heart you'd find a girl who's scared sometimes, who isn't always strong. Can't you see the hurt in me? I feel so all alone. I want to run to you. I want to run to you. Won't you hold me in your arms and keep me safe from harm?" The next step is to offer ourselves that embracing love, to acknowledge our human vulnerabilities, the fact that we're scared sometimes, weak sometimes, that we feel alienated sometimes, and to hold ourselves and keep us safe from harm. That's the third step. These are the steps of the journey of radical self-love. The wisdom of the song, "Saving All My Love for You," telling us it begins by not putting ourselves last on the list, to give ourselves at least a few stolen moments, and then to expand from there into step 2, the wisdom of "I'm Your Baby Tonight," devoting time to be with ourselves, to laying our cards out on the table, discovering and celebrating our magic, and also opening to our failures and our vulnerabilities. And then step 3, the wisdom of the song, "Run to You," to be that presence for ourselves that embraces us in all our vulnerabilities, that holds us and keeps us safe, or at least stays with us in our fear, our weakness, our alienation. This is the practice of radical self-love, the practice of giving ourselves good love. That's the last self-love song. Because when we can sing to ourselves, "You give good love," the Whitney Houston song, then we know we've learned to embody radical self-love. When we can sing to ourselves that I've found out what I've been missing. Always on the run, I've been looking for someone. Now you're here like you've been before, and you know just what I need. It took some time for me to see that you give good love to me, baby. So good. Take this heart of mine into your hands. Never too much. Baby, you give good love. You give good love to me. You give good love. Baby, you give good love. Darling, you give it. This is the foundation, Sonya Renee Taylor tells us. This radical self-love. Because if we don't know what love is, how can we give or receive it? Prentice Hemphill says that it was singing Whitney's love songs as songs of self-love that taught Prentice what love felt like in my body. So I knew when I was receiving love, and I knew when I was giving it to someone else. Once we know that, once we've practiced that, then we can sing love songs to others. The practice of radical self-love is a practice of embracing and loving our full selves, our whole messy selves. And this practice of radical self-love is the foundation for authentic relationship. When we can fully embrace ourselves with all of our human frailty, our vulnerabilities, our failures, including coming to terms with how those failures cause harm and hurt to others, then, and perhaps only then, we can enter into authentic, loving relationships with others. Then we can be those arms that can hold others, that others will run to when they need a loving embrace. Then we can embody our Universalist theology fully and sing to ourselves and to others. I will always love you. I will always love you. Ooh, ooh, I will always love you. May it be so, and may we be among those who make it so.
Though we will extinguish our chalice flame, we carry within us what we kindled, the light of inspiration, warmth, and compassion, the fire of commitment. May we bring these gifts into our lives and share them radiantly out into the world. I now invite you to join me in our community blessing with these words of David Bomba. This church is dedicated to the proposition that behind all our differences and beneath all our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together in spite of time, death, and the space between the stars. We pause now in silent witness to that unity.
For our closing words today, our benediction, I just want to encourage you to take the risk to radically love yourself. If I can do Al Gore's version of singing a Whitney Houston song in front of you, I think you can take that risk to radically love yourself. Remember and say to yourself those words from our Story for All Ages. Say to yourself, I am wonderfully made. I am amazing. I am royalty. No one on earth can steal the joy inside of me. Near or far, you will always find me shining my light.